Alright, this video is in response. I'm gonna put this on both channels, but this video is in response to a white guy who asked me uh, about why black people don't think the Second Amendment applies to them when they're Americans just like everybody else. Like, first off, I hate this type of rhetoric. I just have to say that. I hate the people who want to throw out all these bucket of positivity platitudes and act like there's no race problem or there isn't a pink elephant in the room, and they just want to say, well, why do you call yourself African American? That's a ploy from Jesse Jackson. You all are Americans just like everybody else. Right? These sort of conservative talking points, and I see right through the bullshit when it comes to that. Um, the fact of the matter is that the laws do not apply the same to us as they apply to white folks, or so it seems, or in theory. And how can I say that? Because as I stated before in a previous video that I did, fighting tyranny is for white people. It's not for black people. And any black person who tries to fight tyranny that specifically affects them or their community will be labeled, as, some sort of thug or some sort of rebel or some sort of terrorist, right? You see this with the way that white people label Black Lives Matter, just wholesale. Only white people can fight tyranny. Black people can't. White people aren't even honest about what the Second Amendment is for. What is the Second Amendment for? The Second Amendment is for shooting law enforcement. That is what it is for. Anytime you walk around and you ask a white person, why do you need an AR-15? What is their response? What is an AR-15 for? To fight tyranny. That's what they're going to say. And they don't finish the sentence all the way out. Yeah, okay, if you're fighting tyranny, it's not going to be black people kicking in your front door. It's going to be those same white law enforcement officers that you want to defend and say, Colin Kaepernick is disrespecting the troops and disrespecting law enforcement, when he takes a knee. Those are the people who are going to be kicking in your front door, not black people. And when those people kick in your front door, when that tyranny happens, it's not like you're walking around with your AR-15 defending yourself and you're the patriot. No, at that moment you are the terrorist. When a tyrannical government becomes tyrannical, it doesn't recognize that it's tyrannical. It's going to think and argue that it's doing the right thing and that you are the lawbreaker. You are the cop killer. You are the terrorist. What do you think when the revolutionists from the Revolutionary War, went up against the English crown, that they were considered patriots? No, they were considered terrorists. And if tyranny were to happen, you would be a terrorist. Now the problem I have with white folks is when tyranny affects black people and black people respond to that tyranny, white people immediately side, with the law enforcement because they somehow see law enforcement as an extension of themselves and an extension of the system of white supremacy that they want to pretend like it doesn't exist. Truth be told, law enforcement is the enforcement arm of the government. That is what it is. And white people as a collective identify with that government because they see it as a white government when black people know better, just based on the historical context of black people living in this country. So when we talk about the Second Amendment and we talk about having access to the Second Amendment, a lot of black people don't view the Second Amendment through the same lens that white people view the Second Amendment through, because white people think that like it's like they're just not being honest about it. They think that, it's like they want to have the conversation about, yeah, I need an AR-15 to protect myself against those black thugs, but they don't want to say, I need an AR-15 to protect myself against white law enforcement. Because let's face it, the vast majority of law enforcement is Caucasian males. 93% of all law enforcement are white. So if tyranny were going to happen tomorrow, you would be shooting at white police officers. But nobody wants to actually say that. White police officers are white people's best friend until tyranny happens. It's like they want to be able to, fight a tyrannical government, but they don't really want to articulate the specifics of what that would actually mean. They don't want to talk about that. So when black people, have an apprehension about the Second Amendment, you know, there's reason behind that. Just in the way, because we get no support. So there is no, oh, okay, we defeated, like we're going to have a Waco, Texas, or a Ruby Ridge, or a Clive Bundy situation, and we're going to have the rest of the country on our side. No, white people will simply go out there, Black Lives Matter it to death, and say that those black people are wrong, they're thugs and all that other shit, and dismiss it. It's like the white people who, talk about Colin Kaepernick as disrespecting the troops and whatnot, and it's hilarious on multiple levels. Like, again, there's, this culture of the attack on law enforcement, and then they'll point to stuff like, the Dallas shooting or the Baton Rouge shooting, and completely ignore the fact that those two brothers were veterans of the Afghan and Iraqi war. They were veterans. And I've already talked about, these black men who go off to war, they fight for their country that doesn't give a shit about them. White people want to ignore the historical context. They want to talk about who's disrespecting the troops. I'll tell you what's disrespecting the troops. Black men going off to war and then coming back home and being treated like second class citizens, or black men going off to war and making the ultimate sacrifice, and then they don't even get recognized like their white compatriots got recognized and received medals of honor. They don't receive medals of honor until 70 years, after they died. That's disrespecting the truth. But again, these are things that white folks don't talk about, aside from the fact that Colin Kaepernick is not even taking a knee because of disrespecting the troops. He's taking a knee because of police brutality. But white folks don't want to have that conversation. It's almost like when you argue with a female and, they try to change the conversation into, I don't like the tone in which the manner in which you're talking to me. Oh my God, you called me a bitch, and they try to derail the argument because you're making valid points. They just don't want to hear those points. So they're going to make it about, oh, you called her a bitch, or I don't like the way that you're talking to me, or the tone in which you're talking to me, you know. So it's like black people have reasons why they don't bang with the NRA. Aside from all of the political football and conservative banter, and the coded language and the dog whistles, which are direct and indirect attacks on black people. Um, and then that whole balancing act that the NRA does, where it's saying that we support law enforcement, but then telling the citizenry to arm themselves to the teeth, to fight tyranny, which is in the lexicon. It's in the people's rhetoric. But the NRA doesn't want to come out and specifically state that. They want to say, it's all about sports and recreation, and it's all about land conservation and bullshit like that. Like, go and look at the NRA's mission statement. There isn't not one thing in there that says anything about tyranny or fighting a tyrannical government or any of that. It's not in their mission statement, but yet the rhetoric of that floats around, in the organization, and floats around in, conservative circles and all that. But again, nobody wants to get into the specifics of if a tyrannical government were to come to fruition, who so-called, Second Amendment advocates would actually be shooting at to preserve their freedom. Nobody wants to have that conversation. I mean, it's just intellectual dishonesty all over the place. You go to the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, it says right in there that if a government becomes too tyrannical, it is your duty to overthrow that government. It says it right in there. And obviously, you would need tools to allow you to do that by force, because power is taken and is not given. So obviously it would be by force. So there's a whole bunch of intellectual dishonesty when it comes to white folks and their discussion with black people about the Second Amendment. Black people know that the laws do not apply evenly or fairly or equally to black people, if shit really hit the fan. They know that white people are going to side with other white people. They know that white people are going to, bring out the capes for law enforcement, no matter what they do when it comes to black people. When it comes to white people, then white people can, argue about, taking up arms against law enforcement, or they'll act like, law enforcement, is their best friend. As long as black people are getting knocked over the head, law enforcement is white people's best friend. As soon as law enforcement starts knocking them over the head, then all of a sudden, this is treason, these communist pigs and everything else. But when black people call cops pigs, oh, how dare you, nigger, right? So, this is all this inconsistency. So, pardon black people if they're not eager to jump up and believe that if they exercise their rights that, white people are, right there with them and, standing shoulder to shoulder with their fellow Americans. They're not. They're not. And everything that white people do and say as a collective, not individually, as a collective, reinforces that. So it's not like black people are running around, delusional and as though like they're making it up, but what white people want to be able to do is they want to just come in the room and then gaslight and act like, black people aren't seeing what they're actually seeing, you know. So it's very irritating and frustrating. The fact of the matter is white Americans do not see black Americans in the same light that they see themselves. And the only time that they'll even remotely, deal with or tolerate a black person is if a black person wholeheartedly believes and supports what they support. The minute a black person disagrees with white people, they ain't shit. You know, and not only are they not shit, but they need to be done away with, eradicated, exterminated, excommunicated, cast off, and all of the above. The minute that a black person disagrees, so if you want to answer as to why black people, don't look at the Second Amendment in the same light, there you have it. We know the rules don't apply the same to us. And that's and what I hate about that is it's like you get black people whose response is, well, since the rules don't apply the same to us, we're going to be fear mongered into not exercising our rights because well, what if you get shot, or what if you get pulled over, or what if this happens, or what if that happens? It's funny how we don't do that when it comes to free speech. When it comes to speaking our minds, black people are very vocal. But when it comes to Second Amendment rights, oh no, we can't do that. Massa said we can't have no guns. Now all of a sudden black folks are scared, which in my opinion shows just how much a lot of black people go up there talking shit, but they ain't no punch behind those words. Because we're not even talking about, we're just talking, actual, armed conflict with the government. We're just talking about exercising the right. We're not talking about going out there and getting guns and then immediately going to break the law. We're just talking about mere possession. And black people are scared of mere possession. They're scared to even go down to the police station and fill out the forms and get fingerprinted and all that other stuff. They're scared to do that. They think that simply them even having a gun in the house somehow opens up the door and opens up the window to law enforcement kicking in their front door and shooting them. And that is the country that we live in. So when white people want to come through and they want to talk about, why don't you black people look at the Second Amendment the same way? And how come you all, and something's wrong with you, and you should support this? And so, did you know that Martin Luther King was denied a gun permit? Like we don't know the history. I mean, either white people, they either feign ignorance, they either are ignorant, or they're intentionally, intellectually dishonest, and just want to sit there and gaslight black people as though black people don't know their own reality. So Anyway, that's all I gotta say. That's my video. New Jersey gun laws out.